Hello everyone, it is Elect back today to talk about the Tasmanian state election. It is coming up in a week, and this will be a very interesting election because only recently the Tasmanian lower house has increased their number of seats from 25 seats to 35 seats. They used to have 5 seats in every electorate, but now they have 7 seats in every electorate. I believe they used to have 5 seats, sorry, 7 seats in every electorate, but that was a while ago and they changed it and then changed it back. So the reason they've done this is because they believe with the increasing number of population and increasing number of things to do and increasing workloads, they basically just needed more representatives in Parliament. So they've increased it. And this is obviously going to benefit most of all minor parties and independents who, as they have a lower quota to get elected. So Tasmania uses a different electoral system to the most of Australia for its lower house. It uses proportional representation, but electorate-based or regional-based proportional representation. Um, whilst every other entity of Australia uses just single member electorates apart from the ACT. The ACT electoral system is very similar to the Tasmanian electoral system, and the Tasmanian electoral system is very similar. The lower house, I should say, it's very similar to the electoral systems of most of the upper house and the Senate in Australia. So they've kind of flipped it. So in Tasmania, we've got um, this is Kevin Bonham's website. This is he's very knowledgeable of Tasmania, much 100,000 times more knowledgeable than me. Um, but yeah, they got a legislative council, they got an upper house of Tasmania, but this is actually elected through single member electorates. So they've sort of flipped it. I believe in the ACT they don't have a second house, and neither do they in the Northern Territory or Queensland. Um, this is not up for election. The upper house is not up for election. They're elected every sort of staggered every 6 years. So those elections happen sort of once in a while. They're not. It doesn't happen at the same time as the lower house election. So that, in that way, it's quite different to the rest of the states and territories for that matter. Okay, so basically what this video will be is mostly a prediction. I'm not going to give a full sort of talk about the election and what the issues are and everything like that. If you want to see about that, go onto Kevin Bonham's website. He's got this massive guide where he goes through everything, all the issues. Of course, the stadium, which is this big thing. You've got stability, you've got cost of living, the economy, health. You got all these things. And I could not really regurgitate it as well as he could just say it right here on his blog. So if you want to hear about that, um, then read all that. But I mean, it's a state election, so the issues aren't as grand as a federal election. Suffice to say, they can't do as much as a state. But yeah, definitely the stadium is this big thing, and I think yeah, the Liberal Party are sort of supporting it, but saying like we're going to have a cap on the number of like money we're going to spend on it. Um, and then Labour is like kind of like, well, I don't know, we need to renegotiate it, and I think the Greens are against it. I'm pretty sure. And Lambie is kind of like, whatever. So uh, yeah, there's a lot of issues. And Labour want to put a cap on power prices, and the Liberals mock that, said it's like Mark Latham signing a pledge. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of issues, and I can't say I know too much about them, but I can make a pretty good guess based on opinion polls um, as to how I believe this election is going to be, and I'm going to go through every region or electorate and discuss how I think each one is going to go. So we're going to start with Bass, which is I guess the northernmost electorate. It's in the northeast at least, and I feel like this one is probably the most reliable, I'd say, of all the electorates. I don't think an independent is going to win here. I don't think an independent really has a chance to win here, which is different to every other um, region. So I believe that on this one, the Liberals are going to get three, Labor are going to get, or the Greens will get one. Labor are going to get two, and then the last seat is either going to be between the Liberals or Jackie Lambie. I think it really just depends on how well Jackie Lambie does. I think in 2018 Jackie Lambie did quite well on polling, but then when it came to election day, she slumped and did terribly. So it could happen again, but according to opinion polls, she is doing reasonably well. So I do think Jackie Lambie will win that last seat. Um, Although the betting markets a week ago thought she might even win two, which we will get to. Um, but I think there's a good chance that she won't and the Liberals will get. It really just depends how well the Liberals do because the polls are all pointing towards the Liberal Party with a swing of around 10 to 15% against them. And last election, they did really well. Um, but even if they got, like, to get four seats, you basically need almost 50%. So it's quite difficult um, to get four seats. I mean, when I say 50%, 50% of the primary vote, so the 50% of the first preference vote. So it is quite difficult to get four seats. They did so well last time that it's definitely possible. I believe last time, let's see how much did they get. They got 60% in Bass, so you would expect that it could happen. Some people are saying that it could happen. But I'm going to say that Lambie is not going to do too badly. The Liberals are saying that she has no policies. They made a website smearing her. It's called like JackieLambie.com or something. They apparently paid $35 for the domain, and they said that she has no policies. Um, I don't know how well that's going to work. Um, so, I mean, I think just people just trust sort of Jackie Lambie that she knows what she's doing, like even if, she doesn't have a tremendous amount of policies or she's kind of wishy-washy on things. So, but I could be wrong. Jackie Lambie could definitely get no seats here. We'll see. If we look at Bradden, the Liberal Party will get three or four seats. This is, I believe, it's the most conservative region in the country, in the state, sorry, and Liberals typically do the best here. So they could get four seats. The Labour Party will get two. Um, or they could get one. Some people are suggesting they could even get one, but I believe they'll get two. I believe they'll get two. The Greens won't get any here. The Greens never really poll very well here. Now Lambie, I believe. I mean, this is going to be, this is basically Lambie's homeland, and I believe that, or at least heartland. I'm not actually sure where she's from, but I know she does pretty well here, and if she's going to get a seat anywhere, she's going to get it in Brighton. So I'm going to give her a seat here. So the basically the last seat comes down to either the Liberals getting four seats or Craig Garland, who is a independent candidate who has been trying to get a seat here for quite a while. Now with the lower quota, finally getting a seat. Um, I hope that Craig Garland can pull it off. I really do, but I think it's more likely that Liberals will pick up four seats in Bradden. Like that they got quite a lot last time. Let me check what they got last time. So they got 57.2, which actually wasn't as much as Bass. Um, but they are polling quite well here. They're polling quite well in Bass as well. Um, so I'm just going to say that, like, with it's a more conservative seat. Um, I don't know. I don't know. So I mean, I really would like to give it to Craig Garland, but I just think maybe that like there's not going to be. That's. I mean, if I it's I don't know. It's more conservative. That's why I'm saying it's more likely to be for Liberals there than in Bass. Um, but all right, I'm gonna give that to Craig Garland. Look, I'm just gonna, like I've done some betting on this election, and I did bet that Craig Garland might win, even though the odds were against me. Um, so I'm just gonna be epic and give that to Craig Garland. So but yeah, definitely Liberals could get four seats here. So Lyons is kind of a complicated seat. This is the only seat where I think that Labor could possibly get three. Labor are not polling very well. There seems to be a swing against them, and they didn't do too well last time. They got about 27, 28% last time, and they're polling like at 25 or something like that. So Lyons is the only seat where I think they have a chance of getting three. Um, and then there's also a chance for either an independent Lambie or Green to get a seat. Like the betting markets are quite confident that Lambie will get a seat here. Um, the Greens, I think that especially with like logging, there's like a logging issue back. I think they probably have a chance to get a seat here. And the polls are pointing towards that. So I'm going to give that seat to the Greens, and I'm going to give Labour at least two. The Liberals will get um, at least three here, I believe. Let me double check that. Right, yeah, yeah. So the Liberals will get at least three here. That's what they're polling. So that's not. So that it basically just comes down to this last seat. Will it be Lambie or will it be Labour? I think that's what it could be. Um, it really just depends on how well Lambie does on the day. Really, like we really don't know. She's according to polls, she's polling well, but these polls were of individual electorates, which were taken a couple of weeks ago. And I don't believe the sample size is necessarily that high. And the second poll was actually a mystery poll. So I'm and the other sort of polls that we have that have Lambie on around 10 to 12 points per electorate are all guesstimates because they're not national, statewide polls that I've sort of like used guesstimates on. So um, I don't know for Lions in this last seat. I think I'm going to give it to Lambie. Um, if she does well, she should win a seat here. But yeah, that last seat it could be Labour. Um, I believe there's also an independent who has a chance in Lions, and the independents are polling quite okay. And I'll tell you that if we want to know exactly who that independent is, we will um, go to the daddy of Tasmanian politics himself, Craig Garland, not Craig Garland, sorry, Kevin Bonham, um, and that independent is Tucker. Um, so yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. Um, he's not polling like hugely well. They're polling like it's a chance, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's something it's something that could happen, but I don't think it's going to happen. So if we go back, this is my sort of prediction for Lions. So Clark. So this is the most progressive electorate in the state. There's this issue of UTAS about whether it should be moved or not. I believe the majors are supporting, Greens are against, and independents vary. So there is an incumbent independent, Christy Johnson, and Sue Hickey, who was like the former speaker last time around, who I think defected from the Liberals or something. Um, she is running. She got would have been enough to get a seat last time if we had this lower quota. So the quota has been reduced from like 17%, 16, 17% to 12.5%. So um, the independents are polling well enough to get two seats in Clark, and I believe that is going to be the case. There's also, as I said, like another independent who is called Ben Lohberger, who is campaigning to save UTAS, which is keep it in the Sandy Bay. So maybe some people will be interested in voting for them, but I would assume that maybe if people voted for him, the preferences would go to either the Greens or another independent. So I think it's reasonably likely that two independents will get elected here, which seems interesting. Apparently, yeah, it was like almost enough last time anyway. Labour and Liberal are not polling enough to get more than two seats here. The Greens will get one. They could get two, but I think it's unlikely. Independents will get two. I mean, we have Andrew Wilkie here in this seat. They love independents in Hobart. So I don't think it's that strange. Um, Down to Franklin. Now, the polls are pointing to Liberal only winning two seats here. But basically every commentator, I believe, is saying that the Liberals are going to get three seats here. Uh, so I mean, I'll have to trust them because they know more than me. But like the polls are pointing to like if okay, I have like a document which we'll go on to, which I basically use to kind of make guesstimates, right? So here's Franklin, right? So the polls are saying like so these are the ones where actually there was actual polling of the electorate, and it had them on like 32 and 33, and then which is like almost enough to have three, but like sort of. I mean, like it's sort of like a 2.5. Like I've been giving these like 0.5s to say like, oh, maybe. Um, so I guess it is enough for a 2.5. And then but these like these other polls which are sort of extrapolated from statewide polls are a bit less. So my guesstimate is around 31. So yeah, I mean it is basically a 2.5. Um, so yeah, so I guess I could trust them and say the Liberals will probably get three, Labor will get two, the Greens will probably get one. I just don't see them having enough like sort of support from like these other candidates to get three. And then there is an independent there who is likely to win a seat, who I believe is a former Labor, um, David O'Byrne, I believe. Yes, Byrne. Um, so the pundits are pointing to him, probably getting a seat there. So I'm going to go there, Labour 2, and Greens 1. Okay, so this is my prediction. Oh, Lambie also has a chance in Franklin, um, but it's probably not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen. If I'm sort of doubting whether or not she's going to get Lions, she probably doesn't have a chance in Franklin. Like it's an outside chance. It just really depends on how she does on the day, really. But she's polling all right. She's polling okay, really. I gave her the seat in my little Word document, but I mean that's based on one poll which has her on 10.8 and then one on 8. So it's kind of like I don't know, who knows. Um, so but definitely a chance. And if Jackie Lambie gets a seat, I believe it will be at the expense of the Liberals. Um, we'll see what we'll see. I mean it's a progressive. It is a progressive electorate. Okay, so um, uh, it's not. It wouldn't be too weird if there was sort of if there was four. Well, actually, that would be sort of five left to center. Maybe that's too much. Maybe that's too much. Maybe like David O'Byrne is taking up the sort of like non-major party vote, and maybe it is too unrealistic to expect that Lambie will get a seat here. So this is my best guess of how it is going to look. It's give or take. Maybe the Liberal Party will win one more seat in Bradden. Maybe they'll win one more seat in Bass at the expense of the Jackie Lambie network. I don't see them winning any more than 16. I think 16 is the absolute cap. A lot of people are saying 15. So I think 15 is definitely likely. But I'm going to say 14. I'm going to say 14, and I'm even being generous to them in Franklin. But yes, winning one more seat in Bradden definitely possible. Craig Garland, I really want him to get the seat. I really want him to get the seat, and I hope he does. Um, okay, so what will this mean? So Liberal have been more, what's the word? They've been more happy. I couldn't think of a better word. They've been more happy to possibly get into a minority government than Labour. Um, they've been more happy to negotiate. I mean, they've said that like they don't want to change policies and stuff like that, but it sounds like they're more willing to talk than Labour are. Labour really want to maybe do a deal with a couple of independents, but not have to deal with Lambie and the Greens. Um, Look, I mean, if I think Labour have to be sort of realistic at this point. I mean, I know that sort of they don't want to seem like they are going to be in a coalition of chaos, but that's kind of what they have to be in at this point. A lot of people talk about how it's very difficult for Labour to get much percentage in Tasmania because of funding. um, the Liberals usually get like three times more funding than the Labor Party. There's just a lot more money in the Liberals. So the Labor Party, especially with this 35 seat setup, probably have to expect that they'll never have a majority. Well, they haven't had a majority as long as I know anyway. But even like getting to a majority with just one partner is going to become quite difficult for them. And everyone, commentators. I mean, on Kevin Bonham's website, there's a poll, and it's a bit more generous, giving Labor 12, and maybe they will get something like 12 if some of these independents and Lambies end up going to Labor. If like people are worried about, like stability or something, and they're like, no, fuck it, I'm just gonna vote for Labor. Forget all these independents, forget Craig Garland, forget like the guys in Clark, forget the guy in Franklin. But just the polling is just not indicating that Labor really have much support. Like the polling, it's showing them going backwards. If Labor were a couple more points, if they had like a 5% swing to them or something like that, if they were in the 30s or something, they're polling in the 20s. um, they have to kind of expect that they're going to have to do these minority governments, and it is possible for them to get into government. The Greens are much more willing to work with Labor, so it basically gives them 14. Um, I mean, the Labor hated working with the Greens. I believe they were in a government about 15 years ago that they hated working with the Greens, and it really screwed them over. But that's what you have to do. That's what you got to do. I mean, they could theoretically, well, no, they couldn't actually. Couldn't in this setup. They could not work with just the Lambie and Independents. They'll put them on 17. They need 18. So they basically have to work with the Greens. But if they can work with the Greens, then they can get form government with independence. They can't quite make it with just Lambie. Um, but I mean the independents. I think would be quite sympathetic to Labor. I mean, David O'Byrne is a former Labor who just didn't get pre-selected, I believe. Craig Garland, I believe, is on the political left, and Sue Hickey was kind of like crossing the floor, and Clark is a progressive electorate, and I would assume that independents in those electorates, Kirsty Johnson included, would be open to being progressive. That's what I would assume. Um, I mean, if Labour got one more seat somehow, like in Lyons, for example, it would definitely make things a bit easier for them. It means that they don't have to have all independents working with them, basically. So it's not as bad, right? Um, I mean, yeah, yeah, like I think that would actually, yeah, be much more beneficial to them. So I'm not counting Labour out of the game. Like the Liberal Party called this election because they didn't want to work with the crossbench, and they're going to have to work with the crossbench. They're going to have to. Um, they're going to have to work with Lambie, or they're going to have to work with independents, which is what they don't want to do. They don't want to work with independents. I believe there's only one independent that's going to get re-elected, and that's the one that won last time, which is uh, Kirsty Johnson. So they don't have to work with the ones that they didn't that they are getting rid of, basically, but they're going to have to work with independents. Even if they get 16, they're going to have to work with two independents and or Lambie for that matter, or the Greens, but they did rule out working with the Greens. Um, but that's sort of okay. So I really should have discussed this at the beginning of the video, but I'll just say like basically what Tasmania comes down to is you've got these two electorates up here, which are the conservative electorates, the two progressive electorates down here, and then Lyons is sort of like the centrist electorate. Um, so maybe if the left wins 4 seats in Lyons, then that is an indication that I mean some people can argue that Jackie Lambie is on the left. I definitely think that she is. I definitely think she's on the left. Um, you would argue that if not that that's if you could argue that if this ends up being the result, then maybe it would be better if the Labour Party were in government. But most people are predicting the Liberal Party are going to get 15, not 14. So if they have 15 seats, which would they'll probably get from Craig Garland, if anything, or maybe in Bass. I do think that Liberals will form government. I believe that they'll probably negotiate with the Lambie network and some of the independents to form government. Government, they'll only need either Lambie or all three independents. Although the fact that they have to rely on, if they do form government with independents, on a former Labor member in David O'Byrne, means that it's probably quite unlikely that they would form government with independents, but it would kind of give them a mandate to form government. If the Labor Party has this extra seat here, then the situation becomes a bit more complicated because they can't just form a government with Lambie and Labor and the Greens would equal seats. So I don't know what happens if this situation happens, which is somewhat likely. But if a situation happens where the Liberal Party managed to get 16 seats, say that they got an extra seat in Bass at the expense of the Lambie network, then in this case would be the no-brainer thing that would happen because they've got either a selection of Lambie or two um, workable independents here in Clark. But I think even with 15, I think the Liberal Party will form government. If it comes down to this result, it's going to be it's going to be pretty messy. I really don't know if it comes down to this result. I really don't know what's going to happen. I think that Labor definitely has a chance of forming government, and then again, as I discussed earlier, if they have 11 seats, then I think it makes sense for them to form government. I will be doing a video on the Queensland election quite soon. We got a poll out the other day, a news poll, and then we just had some big by-elections in Queensland, which had massive swings against the Labor Party. So, and I believe Ipswich West will probably fall to Liberals actually, which not many people predicted. So I will definitely be doing a video on the Queensland election coming up very soon. I think the time is right. Um, I did promise to do one like 6 months ago, but we have much more information now. And I will be doing a video on the federal politics as well very soon because my last video was 6 months ago and there is some stuff that I want to discuss. As for this election, the Tasmania election, I will most likely be doing a live stream with Sormon next weekend on Saturday for the election. I will put a announcement video up sometime during the week mentioning to people where they can go to watch it. Um, so please join us for that if you are interested in Tasmanian politics. I have put $150 on this election. I hope to win around at least $200 back. Some of my bets were a bit ballsy, like putting Craig Garland as winning a seat in Bradden. I hope it pays off. Thank you for watching, everyone. Goodbye.